The first whisper of humanity drifted into the galaxy long before any alien ever saw us. It came as fragments, distorted transmissions, faint electromagnetic echoes, pieces of music and laughter that had traveled farther than anyone intended. The Galactic Council analyzed those signals with detached curiosity, assuming that whatever species sent them must be primitive, chaotic, emotional, and therefore harmless, but the few who paid attention warned otherwise. Something in those human voices hinted at a fire that didn't belong to a fledgling world. The story truly began when humanity left its cradle. Not with grand fleets or shining armadas, but with a single vessel, the Dauntless. A ship built not from perfection but determination. Its hull carried weld marks from engineers who had worked until their hands bled. Its engines were powered by theories written on napkins by scientists who never slept. It was flawed, noisy, half-mad, and entirely human. The galaxy took notice too late. When the Dauntless breached interstellar space, its crew saw wonders they had only dreamed of, nebulae blooming in colors never seen on Earth, ancient stars burning like embers of forgotten gods, and structures, alien megastructures, so large they wrapped the darkness like skeletal banners. Human hearts trembled, some from fear, most from awe. The crew expected a welcome, or a warning, or at least a cosmic signpost. Instead, the universe greeted them with silence. It was the kind that felt intentional, like the quiet of a predator watching from the shadows. The captain, Elias Rourke, stood on the forward deck as distant galaxies shimmered across the glass. His reflection stared back at him, tired, hopeful, stubborn. He whispered to the darkness that humanity had come in peace. The stars did not respond. But something else did. A pulse of energy, sharp, cold, mathematical, lashed across the Dauntless hull. Systems flickered. Lights dimmed. The ship trembled like a wounded animal. Before the crew could react, an alien vessel materialized from the void. A structure of spiraling crystal and silent malice. Its presence felt like judgment. The crew froze, breath shallow, waiting for the universe to decide their fate. A beam of scanning energy washed through the ship, reading every cell, every scar, every heartbeat. Somewhere deep within the alien vessel, a voice, not spoken but projected, murmured disdain. To them, humanity was fragile, emotional, chaotic, and therefore unworthy of the stars. The Dauntless crew expected fear to rise within their chests, but something else stirred instead, a quiet, ancient defiance. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and their own worst impulses. They had risen from mud to steel, from fire to electricity, from sailboats to starships. They were not perfect, but they were relentless. And this moment, this silent confrontation, felt like the universe testing them once again. The alien vessel extended an appendage of shimmering energy, preparing to reshape the Dauntless into atoms. The crew braced for obliteration, but Rourke felt something strange, calm, not acceptance. Readiness. He placed his hand on the ship's command interface, whispering to the machine like a trusted companion. The engines flared. Systems realigned. The Dauntless, built by dreamers and fools, roared with the spirit of every human who had ever dared to look up at the night sky. For a heartbeat, the universe hesitated, and humanity stepped forward. The alien beam shattered across a hastily generated shield, imperfect, unstable, but powered by human will. Sensors overloaded. The alien vessel recalibrated. The void trembled with rising tension as two civilizations stared into each other's souls. And in that breath between aggression and annihilation, the humans felt something unexpected, exhilaration. They had always been underestimated, they had always been overlooked. But now, in the cold abyss where no one believed they belonged, humanity prepared to prove that the warning should never have been ignored. The galaxy had seen empires rise and fall. It had witnessed wars that spanned millennia. But it had never met a species quite like this, one that did not fear the dark. Because they had been born from it, and as the first clash of light erupted between ship and invader, the universe began to understand a simple truth. Humans were not here to ask for permission. They were here to survive, to endure, to defy, and the price for underestimating them would echo across the stars. This was only the beginning. The first battle between the Dauntless and the crystalline alien vessel did not begin with explosions. It began with a silence so heavy it felt like pressure on the spine, an expectation, a tightening of destiny. The universe seemed to lean closer, as if curious about these fragile newcomers who dared to raise their voices in a choir of ancient species. The alien ship adjusted its trajectory with cold precision, rotating its lattice body as streams of spectral energy spiraled along its surface. These aliens, later known as the Vilar Dominion, prided themselves on order, on control, on the quiet obedience of lesser civilizations. Their beams were designed to disassemble molecules, rewrite matter, and snuff out stars if required. But something about the humans unsettled them. Not their technology, it was crude. Not their biology, it was weak, it was their unpredictability, inside the Dauntless. Alarms cried for attention. Sparks burst from exposed panels. Engineers scrambled as metal groaned like an injured beast. Navigation flickered in and out of existence. Yet amid the storm of chaos, humanity did what it always did best. They adapted. Lieutenant Maya Solari shoved aside a smoking console and rerouted power manually through exposed conduits. Cortical implants flickered against her skull as she forced the engines back online. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the thrill of facing the unknown. Every human aboard felt it. This moment was history being carved in real time. The alien vessel released a second burst of energy, brighter and sharper. It slammed into the shield the humans barely understood, but instinctively trusted. The shield cracked like glass under pressure, but it held long enough for a plan to spark in Rourke's mind. Not a perfect plan. A human plan. The ship veered hard, scraping through a cloud of frozen stellar dust. Ice crystals splashed across the hull in a glittering wave. Rourke used the dust as cover, something no Vilar strategist would ever consider: messy, imprecise, unpredictable matter. But to humans, imperfection was a tool. The Vilar scanned the dust, frustrated. Their beams refracted unpredictably. Their targeting arrays wavered, uncertain. For the first time in their long dominion, something did not respond to their order. It was beneath them. And that insult cut deeper than any weapon. The Dauntless burst from the dust cloud at an angle the Vilar did not anticipate, engines roaring like an ancient earth storm. Rourke ordered a full burn, an insane maneuver that risked tearing the ship apart. The engine core howled as gravity twisted. Crew members were thrown from their stations but held on with the desperation of pioneers refusing to die on the first page of their story. The ship spun beneath the alien vessel's undercarriage. For a moment, humanity glimpsed the heart of the Vilar ship, a swirling chamber of crystalline intelligence, billions of alien minds embedded in a single entity. It stared back, studying the humans like insects dancing on a battlefield meant for gods. Then the humans unleashed their first shot. It wasn't a sophisticated weapon. Just a magnetized spear of compressed alloy, fired with brute force. Primitive by galactic standards. Laughable, even, yet it hit the Vilar hull like a prophecy. The spear pierced the crystalline surface and embedded itself deep inside. The alien ship flickered in alarm, its first taste of the raw, unfiltered creativity of a species that survived not through perfection, but stubbornness. Inside the Vilar collective consciousness, something rippled: confusion. Humans weren't predictable. They weren't organized. They weren't even technologically impressive, but they were dangerous in a way no algorithm could map. The alien ship retaliated with a pulse so massive it lit the void like a false sunrise. It engulfed the Dauntless entirely. Panels blew out. Structural beams buckled. For a moment, the ship vanished behind a veil of pure energy. The crew felt the heat crawl across the metal. Felt their bones vibrate. Felt the universe pulling them apart, but humanity had always endured the unendurable. Solari slammed a manual override. Engineers redirected emergency coolant. The shield held for exactly 2 seconds longer than it should have. 2 seconds that meant survival. The Dauntless burst from the blaze, trailing smoke, missing plates of armor, but alive in defiance of the laws the Viler worshipped. Rourke's voice carried across the ship, steady as stone. He didn't scream. He didn't panic. His calm was the kind that forged leaders and legends. The crew felt their fear settle, replaced by something deeper, more ancient, hope. It was irrational. Illogical. Beautiful. The Viler vessel studied the wounded ship, baffled. These creatures should have submitted. Should have broken. Instead, they fought with the fury of a cornered storm. The alien collective reached a conclusion: humanity was a threat. Not because of their ships. Not because of their weapons, because they refused to die. More Viler vessels appeared, 6. 10. A full punitive wing materializing like blades around the humans. Their crystal forms glistened with lethal brilliance. Rourke stared at the sight, breath steady. The universe had just revealed its teeth, and humanity bared its own. The Dauntless engines surged. Systems rerouted. Weapons charged with a sound that resembled a heartbeat, growing louder, stronger, defiant. The galaxy had seen empires burn, stars collapse, and ancient species fade into memory. But it had never seen humanity fight for its right to exist, and as the Viler surrounded the lone human ship, ready to erase a species they barely understood, the first spark of a legend ignited, a spark that would soon set the stars on fire. The Viler formation tightened like a glittering noose around the wounded Dauntless. Each alien vessel adjusting its position with surgical grace. Their crystalline hulls refracted starlight into cold rainbows, beautiful in the way a guillotine might be beautiful, precise, final, inevitable. They were not playing anymore. They were preparing to end the troublesome anomaly that dared call itself human. Inside the Dauntless, the atmosphere felt charged, like the breath before a lightning strike. Smoke drifted through corridors, mixing with sparks that fell like fireflies dying in the dark. Systems flickered, life support strained, the reactor groaned, the shield core throbbed like a failing heart, yet not a single human faltered. In the medical bay, crew members with shattered ribs and lacerated skin refused sedation, insisting on returning to their posts. In engineering, tech crews crawled through burning maintenance shafts to reroute power through cables still glowing from heat. The ship had become something more than steel and circuitry. It was a vessel of human will, scarred, stubborn, unbreakable. Captain Rourke stood in the command chamber, staring down the approaching armada. His pulse slowed instead of raced. Fear sharpened him. The thought of humanity's first encounter ending in extinction carved a line of cold determination through his chest. If they would die teaching the galaxy exactly what they had encountered. The Viler ships began charging their weapons. Within their crystalline minds, threads of logic wove a conclusion: annihilation required no ceremony. The humans' resistance was statistically irrelevant. But there was something about the humans' cohesive unpredictability, something that didn't fit into the models, so the Viler did what they had never done before. They opened a channel, not with words, but with a psychic pulse that hit the Dauntless like an icy whisper slicing through the skull. Every human felt it, a cold intellect, ancient and merciless, evaluating them like a butcher assessing meat. The message was simple: stand down, submit. The universe is not yours. But the humans didn't break. They didn't fall to their knees. They didn't accept the fate assigned to them by beings who saw themselves as cosmic royalty. Instead, something stirred in the human subconscious, an instinct older than civilization. An instinct that had driven their ancestors to cross oceans, climb mountains, survive winters, outrun predators, and rise from caves to touch the moon. Defiance. It wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be. It radiated from every human aboard like a second heartbeat. The Viler felt it, and recoiled. No species was supposed to respond to a Dominion mind pulse with defiance. No species was built that way. Yet here these creatures were, fragile, tiny, short-lived, and their answer was a roar of inner fire that shook the psychic channel. Shock rippled through the Viler collective. For the first time in centuries, they hesitated, Rourke felt that sliver of hesitation. He seized it. He ordered Solari to initiate the Blind Horizon maneuver, a half-theoretical tactic buried in Earth's early deep space protocols, something considered reckless even by human standards. A maneuver designed for no-win scenarios. A maneuver with a survival probability so low that earlier captains had called it playing dice with death. Solari's eyes widened as she studied the calculations. They didn't add up. They didn't even resemble sanity. But she smiled despite the blood dripping down her cheek. Humanity had always been proud gamblers. The dauntless engines screamed as they overloaded deliberately, flooding the surrounding space with unstable gravitational eddies. The Vilar ships detected the anomaly too late. Their precise formations wavered as spacetime twisted around the human vessel like a whirlpool of bending light. The Dauntless shot forward, straight toward the center of the Vilar formation. Dozens of Vilar beams fired in synchronized retaliation. But the twisting eddies bent the streams just enough to scatter them. Brilliant spirals of lethal energy curved harmlessly into the void. The Vilar ships scrambled to compensate, but humans thrived in chaos. To them, unpredictability wasn't a flaw, it was an ecosystem. Rourke steered the ship into the densest cluster of alien vessels, where their own weapons risked hitting each other. It was a trap worthy of legends, one that no ordered, rule-bound species would ever imagine. The humans initiated a pulse detonation, far from destructive, but blinding. A burst of distorted EM waves flared out like a supernova flash. The Vilar arrays spasmed in confusion. Their vision clouded. Their sensors drowned in noise. In the whiteout, the Dauntless dove beneath the nearest Vilar dreadform and unleashed a salvo of kinetic slugs at point-blank range. Crystals cracked. Fractures webbed across alien hulls. One ship dimmed as its internal matrices destabilized. The humans had drawn blood. The Vilar armada convulsed in collective fury. Their beams converged from every direction, turning the void into a cage of burning geometry. And this time, some of those beams struck home. The Dauntless buckled, metal snapped, a section of the lower hull collapsed, firestorm roared through the engineering bay, several crew members were lost instantly, faces, names, dreams swallowed in an instant. Their sacrifice added fuel to the crew's resolve. Rage simmered beneath their grief, not wild, not reckless, but focused. Human rage, when honed, was sharper than any Vilar weapon. The Vilar formation rearranged with terrifying speed, attempting to cut off every possible exit vector. They were adapting now, not with creativity, but with overwhelming force. They intended to crush the humans like an insect trapped beneath a boot. Rourke saw it happen, and he prepared his next move. Amid the burning consoles and fractured hull, he sensed something the Vilar never would, the rhythm of human survival. The instinct that always found a crack in the wall, a breath in the suffocation, a spark in the ashes. Humanity had always been at its strongest when cornered. The Vilar ships closed in. Their weapons reached full charge. Their collective mind reached the unanimous conclusion, the human threat must end here. But the humans were not done yet. The engines roared back online. The shield core sputtered but revived like a pulse refusing to fade. Damaged systems reactivated one after another, some barely holding together, but holding nonetheless. The Dauntless turned its battered hull toward the encroaching armada. The crew stood ready. The Vilar expected surrender. What they got was humanity's full fury. The next moment would decide the fate of not just a ship, but a species. And in that moment, the galaxy held its breath. The moment the Vilar prepared their final strike, the void seemed to tighten around the Dauntless like a clenched fist. Their crystalline armada glowed with terrible symmetry, 50 ships now, each one a shard of cosmic judgment, each one charged with enough power to turn a moon into steam. Their formation radiated a cold intelligence, a collective certainty that the humans before them were already ghosts. They fired. The universe erupted in geometry. Perfect lines of annihilation carved through the darkness, converging toward the wounded human vessel with the precision of divine wrath. The beams tore open the fabric of night, illuminating dust clouds, distant asteroids, forgotten relics drifting through space. The galaxy felt the tremor of the Viler's full power, and for a second, just a second, humanity stood at the edge of extinction, the Dauntless braced for impact. The shields flickered like dying embers. The hull groaned, trembling beneath the weight of 1,000 GS, panels burst. Atmosphere hissed from microscopic cracks. It should have been the end, but humanity does not yield to inevitability. With a cry of tortured metal, the Dauntless pivoted at the last possible millisecond, diving into the very center of the incoming beams. The ship plunged into the kill zone, not to escape it, but to use it. The beams collided behind them, distorting one another, collapsing into a burst of quantum turbulence so chaotic that even Viler sensors scrambled. The Viler had never encountered a species so reckless. So brilliant. So willing to survive by hurling itself through the jaws of death. That maneuver bought the crew moments, seconds carved from the hands of fate, but moments were all humanity ever needed. Inside the ship, chaos roared. Bulkheads collapsed. Compartments sealed. Fire suppression systems failed one after another. But the humans moved like currents of determination through corridors shrouded in smoke. In engineering, Maya Solari and her team threw themselves across sparking conduits to keep the power grid from detonating. Plasma arced across the floor. One misstep would incinerate them, but the team didn't flinch. They had already accepted that humanity's survival might depend on whether they held this corridor for 10 more seconds. In navigation, a young officer named Aaron fought to reroute thruster control through a shattered interface. He typed with burned fingers, cursing through gritted teeth as the console seared him again and again. He didn't stop, he didn't even look at the injuries. The galaxy would remember his name, even if he himself didn't live long enough to hear it. In the command chamber, Captain Rourke stood with the stillness of a cliff in a hurricane. His eyes reflected the glow of a dying ship and a furious crew. He felt every impact like a heartbeat inside the hull. He issued orders that sounded like madness, orders that felt like suicide, orders so brilliant they shattered the Viler's perfect logic. The Dauntless plunged between two Viler dreadforms, scraping along the crystalline surface of one and absorbing the blast intended for another. The collision sent shards of the alien hull spiraling like glowing snowflakes. The Viler recoiled, alarm rippling through their collective. Humans were not supposed to ram a Dominion vessel. They weren't even supposed to consider it. Humanity had never followed the script written for it. The ship's AI, half-fried from earlier pulses, flickered to life long enough to mumble corrupted predictions. The probabilities of survival were microscopic. Then non-existent. Then flickered back into undefined. Rourke smiled grimly. Undefined was good. Humans thrived in undefined. A surge of energy coursed through the Viler formation. They were preparing something catastrophic, an event weapon. A gravitational implosion sphere. The kind of weapon reserved for cleansing star systems. If fired at close range, the Dauntless wouldn't just die. It would cease to have ever existed. More Viler vessels closed around them. A shimmering sphere began forming at the center of the largest ship, a growing orb of imploding spacetime that distorted light into impossible spirals. The air in the Dauntless grew thin as gravity wavered, causing blood vessels to tighten, hearts to ache, bones to grind. Humanity stared into the maw of erasure itself. Rourke exhaled slowly. There was no running, there was no hiding, only pushing forward, because that was what humans had always done. From the savannas of Earth to the cold oceans of the void, he ordered the ship toward the gravitational sphere. The crew didn't question him. They understood. Humans had always stolen fire from the gods, sometimes literally. If the Viler wanted to wield a collapsing star, then the humans would take it from them. The ship accelerated, ignoring the screaming protests of its hull. Every meter closer threatened to tear it apart. Bulkheads warped. Glass shattered. People clung to whatever they could grab as gravity twisted like a serpent. The Viler reacted with shock. No species had ever willingly moved toward a gravitational implosion. The sphere reached critical mass. The Dauntless reached it first. Solari slammed a command into the reactor, initiating a counterpulse. The ship vomited raw energy into the sphere, energy laced with human unpredictability. Human error, human chaos, the sphere destabilized, its structure flickered, something impossible happened. Instead of collapsing inward and shredding the Dauntless, the sphere buckled and detonated outward, an implosion reversed by the messy, imperfect surge from the human ship. The explosion was silent. Tremendous. Beautiful. A wave of distorted reality rippled outward, tearing through the Vilar formation like a cosmic tidal force. One by one, Vilar ships shattered. Their crystalline hulls fractured into a billion shards, each piece glowing with residual energy. The collective mind screamed in psychic pain that echoed through the Dauntless like a ghostly storm, when the light finally faded. The Vilar armada was broken, only 3 ships remained intact, distant silhouettes drifting with stunned hesitation. The survivors backed away slowly, their formations disordered, their confidence shattered. They had seen something they could not model, could not predict, could not understand, a species that used chaos like a weapon, a species that rewrote death itself into opportunity, a species that survived the impossible, humanity. The Dauntless floated amid the debris field, its hull torn, its lights dim, its crew exhausted and bleeding, but alive. In the stunned quiet that followed, something settled across the human vessel. Not relief. Not victory, awakening. The galaxy had just glimpsed the truth the Galactic Council once feared. Humanity was not fragile, they were not harmless, they were not to be tested, and as the remaining Vilar ships retreated into the shadows of deep space, a single realization echoed through the stars: the humans had just declared themselves, not as conquerors, not as subjects, but as equals in a universe that never wanted them. The war had only begun, the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to underestimate Earth. And the Dauntless, though wounded, surged once more into the darkness. Because humanity's fight was far from over, the Dauntless drifted in the silent aftermath of the implosion wave, surrounded by glittering fragments of shattered Vilar dreadforms. The debris floated like the remnants of a cosmic cathedral, lit by distant starlight and the last faint pulses of dying alien energy. Amid that eerie beauty, the humans took their first breath of stunned survival. But there was no triumph in the air, only the weight of understanding. Humanity had stepped into a war it did not start, yet could no longer escape. Inside the ship, damage reports flooded in like a relentless tide. Whole decks were offline. Engineering was half flooded with coolant mist. Gravity fluctuated in stuttering waves that made the crew stagger as if drunk. Life support groaned with the strain of a ship that should have been dead 10 times over. Yet still, the humans moved with purpose. Solari wiped soot from her forehead as she crawled from beneath a collapsed conduit. Burns covered her arms. Her hair was singed at the ends. But her eyes, those held the fire of a survivor who had seen death blink first. She limped toward the reactor control room, stepping over shattered panels and the quiet forms of those who had fallen. For each face she passed, something hardened inside her, not despair, not grief, but resolve. They had died so humanity could keep climbing, so humanity would. In the command chamber, Rourke ran a hand over the flickering holomap. It displayed their position relative to the nearest star and the shifting signatures of the remaining Vilar ships. The 3 survivors weren't fleeing anymore. They had regrouped far beyond the debris field. Maintaining a circular formation as if guarding something, Rourke narrowed his eyes. They weren't merely watching, they were waiting. He sensed it in his bones, that the Vilar were not done with humanity. That the shattered armada was merely a fragment of something far larger. Something that had already awakened with a cold, methodical fury. The humans had survived their first battle, the second would be different, the second would be calculated. The crew worked feverishly to restore basic functions. Sparks showered the corridors as teams rerouted emergency power. Holographic screens flickered, showing unstable readings of the ship's core. The reactor itself pulsed with a beat that no machine should ever make, slow. Uneven, as if it were imitating a living heart struggling to keep the body alive. In medbay, Dr. Hannah Ellen stitched wounds with trembling hands. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and melted circuitry. She moved from patient to patient with silent efficiency, refusing rest, refusing the gentle suggestions of the ship's failing med-AI. These people depended on her hands, and she would not fail them, not now. Everywhere, the crew worked with the grim focus of those who had understood the truth. Survival was no longer enough. Humanity needed to send a message. Hours passed like moments. The ship stabilized, barely. The light steadied into a dim, eerie glow. The engines hummed with uncertain power. The shields flickered but remained functional at a fraction of their strength, and still, the Viler did not approach. That was what unsettled Rourke most. As the crew repaired systems, he studied the strange formation the three alien ships held. A perfect triangle, each vessel equidistant from a central point in empty space. Yet something energy-rich pulsed there, something invisible, something vast. His instincts prickled. Humans had always trusted their instincts more than the numbers. And numbers, right now, made no sense at all. He ordered a deep scan. The results made the bridge fall silent. The Viler were creating a gate, a hyperspatial rift. A doorway, and whatever was coming through dwarfed even their dread forms. The crew stared at the growing anomaly with a mix of awe and dread. The space around the triangulated point warped like melting glass. Colors bled into one another. Darkness folded inward, then outward, as if the universe itself recoiled from what approached. Humanity had wounded the Viler, and now the Viler were calling the one thing that terrified even them. Solari's voice cracked with exhaustion and disbelief. Whatever's coming. We're not ready. Rourke didn't answer. His jaw tightened. His blood ran cold. He felt the weight of every human life aboard the ship, of the legacy they carried, of the untold billions on Earth who depended on this first contact not turning into annihilation. He whispered to no one in particular, perhaps to the ship, perhaps to fate itself, we survived what we weren't ready for. The gate expanded. From deep within the swirling distortions came a structure, no, a presence. Larger than anything built by mortal hands. A Viler overmined ship. Its mass eclipsed the smaller dread forms. Its hull pulsed with the glow of a billion interconnected minds. Its surface was a living lattice of crystal and dark energy, moving like breathing stone. Its psychic voice swept across the void like a tsunami. Humanity felt it not in their ears, but in their very bones. Cold, perfect, ancient, able that had cowed entire civilizations before Earth even invented language. The humans staggered. A few collapsed. Lights dimmed across the Dauntless as if the ship itself bowed before the overwhelming presence. The Viler Overmind spoke without words. Kneel, submit, your defiance ends now. For the first time, Rourke felt fear, not of dying, but of losing what made humans human. Fear of their spirit breaking under a force older and colder than the stars themselves. But then something unexpected happened. The humans fought the psychic wave, not with technology, not with shields, but with emotion. Solari thought of her family on Earth, her mother who planted flowers in the cracked soil of a place once called home. Ellen thought of the faces she had saved in Medbay. Each one a spark worth protecting. Aaron thought of standing barefoot on a beach, staring at the horizon wishing for adventure. Rourke thought of the first time he looked up at the night sky and dared to dream of touching it. Those memories, painful, joyful, flawed, rose in defiance of the Overmind's psychic command. The Viler felt something unfamiliar, a wall made not of logic, but of humanity's relentless spirit. For the second time, the Viler hesitated, and Rourke seized that hesitation. With everything he had left, he ordered a course directly toward the Overmind ship. The crew obeyed without question. Not because it made sense, but because they trusted him, because humanity had always charged toward the impossible with teeth bared and hearts burning. The Dauntless roared forward, engines screaming, every plate of metal vibrating with the strain of pushing against gravity, against fear, against fate. The Overmind's psychic roar intensified, cracking consoles, rupturing blood vessels, sending waves of pain through the crew. But still they advanced. The Viler were gods in their own minds. Humanity was the upstart that refused to bow. The Overmind unleashed a torrent of energy that lit the void in blinding white, power enough to unmake matter. Rourke ordered the ship straight into it. The shield shattered. the hull blistered, the ship trembled on the brink of disintegration, and still. They pushed forward, the universe watched. The Viler recoiled, the gate quaked, and humanity, battered and bloodied, reached for the heart of the Overmind, because if they could strike it, if they could wound the mind that ruled millions, then the galaxy would never again doubt humanity's right to exist. The Dauntless burned like a falling star, the crew screamed through agony, the Overmind unleashed its full wrath, and humanity did something no species had ever done: they refused to break. The impact was imminent, the collision would shake history itself, and the galaxy braced for the moment humanity would rewrite the laws of fear forever. Here is part 6, longer, deeper, and more cinematic than every part before it. The galaxy held its breath, not just the fleets, or the governments, or the desperate civilians crouched beneath defensive domes. Not just the war councils, the admirals, or the terrified scientists watching energy readouts climb toward impossible levels. Even the stars themselves seemed to dim, as if the cosmos knew that what was coming would be written into its bones. The Herod swarm did not come as ships this time. They came as a living horizon, an ocean of black fractal wings, unfolding across systems, blotting starlight, suffocating hope. Millions, then billions, then numbers no human tongue could shape. Their queen mind pulsed through subspace like a screaming sun. Roaring her intention into every trembling world, consume the defiant species. Break the anomaly. Erase humanity. Across the frontline systems, human ships shuddered as the swarm's subspace vibrations stabbed into their hulls. Metal warped. Sensors went blind. Fusion cores hiccuped. Even the legendary vessels of the Terran Vanguard bent beneath the noise, and still. They held, aboard the Odyssey's reckoning. Captain Aria Vale stood at her command rail, blood dried across her forehead from the last hull breach. Her voice rasped yet refused to break as she gave orders into a shaking calm grid. The ship's artificial gravity flickered, making every movement feel like wading through shifting water. The cosmic storm beyond the hull was so vast and violent that even light seemed to retreat, yet Vale did not retreat, humanity did not retreat. On the surface of Kepler 92b, where a swarm tendril had punched through the atmosphere like a spear of night, the last ground division continued their impossible stand. Trenches carved with shaking hands. Railguns firing molten streaks of steel into impossible numbers. Men and women fighting with the stubborn refusal of a species that had crawled through extinction events and still kept going. Many of them knew they would not survive the hour. But they also knew something else: humanity never fought to survive. Humanity fought to matter. Every planet. Every station. Every outpost lit up the void with human rage and human hope, refusing to bow, even as the sky folded under the weight of a devouring empire. In the hidden vault near Sol, ancient machines built from reverse-engineered alien tech hummed with awakening. Bracewell's infinity pulse, humanity's final gamble, began synchronizing with the resonance patterns carried by Elias Mercer's sacrificed mind. His neural echoes, encoded into layered quantum threads, reached across the network like a phantom conductor. He was gone, yet guiding them still, his memories. His instincts. His stubborn belief that humans could outthink any cosmic predator. Energy built. Systems synchronized. The pulse charged, but the swarm queen felt it. Her attention whipped toward the Sol system like a black storm turning to face a single candle. She accelerated her vanguard, ripping through space, dragging gravity distortions in her wake. Human fleets scrambled to intercept, forming a wall of ships doomed to die, but determined to make that death meaningful. Cruisers rammed living fractal carriers. Destroyers detonated their cores in suicidal bursts, ripping gashes through the swarm's biomass. Pilots screamed battle cries drowned in static, their final transmissions cutting off mid-sentence as their ships were swallowed by the black tide. And in the middle of it all, the pulse's countdown ticked lower. Inside the vault, the Infinity device glowed brighter, arcs of impossible geometry forming above its activation ring. Panels exploded. Consoles melted under the rising charge. Engineers scrambled, skin blistering from the ultraviolet wash of something that wasn't quite light, a final connection snapped into place. Elias's voice, only a fraction, only a phantom, whispered through the core, now. Humanity obeyed, the infinity pulse fired. It did not explode outward like a conventional weapon. It unfolded. A sphere of inverted resonance expanding in perfect silence, like a flower blooming in reverse. Space buckled, reality trembled, and the Swarm Queen felt, for the first time in a million years, fear. The wave hit her vanguard first, her fractal wings shivered, not from destruction, from confusion. The pulse was not made to kill, it was made to invert cosmic command hierarchies. To break hive obedience. To scramble the psychic architecture that bound the swarm into a single will. Billions of swarm creatures suddenly became individuals, billions became free. The queen shrieked across the cosmos, a psychic roar that shattered asteroids to dust and cracked the ice crusts of distant moons. Her control was dissolving like sand in a storm. The wave reached her, her wings spasmed. Her fractal limbs curled. Her mind, constructed of millions of enslaved consciousnesses, began to collapse inward. Human ships saw the darkness ripple, human soldiers saw the tide falter, human hearts saw possibility. On Kepler 92b, ground troops surged forward, chasing enemy lines suddenly shivering in chaos. In orbit, starships punched through broken formations as if slicing water. Across the front, humanity surged, screaming defiance into the void. The Queen fought to reassert control. She clawed at the freed drones. She stabbed psychic tendrils into the rupture. She bled energy like a wounded star. But the pulse grew stronger, because the pulse was not powered by machines alone. It was powered by humanity's certainty that freedom mattered more than survival. A final tremor passed through the Queen's titanic form. Her wings folded, her mind cracked, her empire, one that consumed suns, shattered civilizations, and ruled 1,000 silent galaxies, collapsed in a whisper of unraveling thought. The swarm broke, the horizon of wings dissolved into scattered fragments retreating into the dark. Their formations collapsed like smoke in wind. Their once perfect geometry became chaos, then silence, and humanity stood alone in the stillness, not victorious, not triumphant, but unbroken. Human ships drifted through debris fields lit by the dying glow of the pulse. Soldiers lowered weapons with shaking hands. Medics rushed to treat the wounded. Engineers slumped against consoles that had nearly melted beneath their touch. Captain Vale stared at the stars, eyes wet but fierce. Somewhere in the vault, the pulse finally dimmed, its function complete. A recording blinked alive, Elias Mercer's final message, stored as a contingency. His voice, tired, hopeful, played through the quiet. If you're hearing this, humanity is still alive. And if humanity is alive, then the galaxy still has a future. Across every war-torn world, people listened. Some cried. Some smiled. Some simply breathed. For the first time in hours. Humanity had done what no civilization had ever dared attempt. They broke the will of a cosmic tyrant. They freed a species that had known only obedience. They proved the Galactic Council wrong. Once again, because the galaxy had feared humanity.